What is the quintessential Chaos Space Marine? Where does your mind go when you first think of the spiky versions of the Space Marines? Probably Black Legion, but Black Legion is boring. They're the Ultramarines of Chaos Space Marines. What I usually think of are the Red Corn Boys, the World Eaters. These guys were the genesis of the 40k meme, When Life Gives You Lemons. Blood for the Blood God. If Space Marines are the honor-bound champions of humanity, then the World Eaters are the exact opposite. They're barely even a cohesive legion. Like every now and then, Demon Primarch Angron will kind of rustle them back up into an army, but for the most part, it's just a bunch of different groups of guys just running across the battlefield to kill, maim, and burn. I've played against these guys many a time in games of Warhammer 40,000, and now I've got a little gaggle of these suckers. I got them from the used shelf at my friendly local game store because it's about time I gave the World Eaters a chance. The unique infantry of the World Eaters are the Khorne Berserkers. Big wig helmets, chainswords and chain axes, and cute little bolt pistols, these guys are a nasty close combat option. These are used models, and there was just a little bit of cleanup to do, finding some sprue bits that the previous owner missed and drilling out the gun barrel. I like to put a little dent right in the middle using my hobby knife, pressing it in and then doing a few spins to chisel away a little bump in preparation for drilling it out. Sometimes this leaves a little rough spot, but I can smooth it out with a drop of plastic glue. The next challenge is getting rid of the base. I don't know why, but every time I buy secondhand minis, they have been glued down to the base with the world's strongest plastic glue. I have to carve away the old base, and then I use my Dremel to grind down the remaining plastic and get it back to bare feet. Well, bare boots. Power boots. After a quick nail file, these feet are finally free, and now I need to get a base ready for this guy. Khorne Berserkers are a little bit on the short side. They're a bit shorter than Primaris Space Marine, so I like to give them a little extra height with the base. I started out super gluing down some 1/2 inch rough cork, which I cut on an angle to give them a little cliff to be launching off of, letting the front hang out over the base rim. Then I took some 1/4 inch cork to make some more spikes, tearing off some triangles, grinding them down a little bit, and then gluing them on with plenty of ultra thin super glue. I used my fingers to rip up the cork, making it nice and uneven. I don't know if this is a chaos world or if the Khorne Berserkers are just so rageful that the world changes to fit their mood. I drilled some 1mm holes up into his legs, inserted 1mm brass rods, and then stabbed him down into the cork. His feet are pretty big, so superglue would probably be fine, but just to make sure, it's not that much trouble to pin this fella. I added a little bit more cork, using up the extra bits I've torn off to give the ground a nice uneven surface, and then I set it on a paint handle using some double stick tape. I glued down some Citadel skulls and then put some texture paste down over everything to soften the harsh edges of the cork, building it up along the skulls using a damp brush to wipe them clean. Now my little berserker is ready for some paint. In my opinion, what makes a World Eater's army is the Khorne Berserkers and Karn the Betrayer. 8-bound, pretty cool, and the new profile for the Forge Fiend, oh my goodness. Blast plus rapid fire ×3 is pretty disgusting. But those things are in addition to the Berserkers. The Berserkers are what makes a Khorne army. Khorne cares not from whomst the blood flows, only that it flows. And the Berserker's job is to make that happen. And as somebody who loves big blobs of Space Marines wielding chainswords, the Berserkers they're pretty cool. In my opinion, not as cool as my big Crusader squads, but on the tabletop, they're quite a bit better. They can also be taken in 20-man squads, and that's 20 full Battle Brothers, not 10 Battle Brothers and 10 Scouts. The Khorne Berserkers are ridiculous. A full 20-man brick is like nearly 100 attacks. In the right detachment, it is 100 attacks. And that's too many attacks. Nothing needs that. I think 10-man squad is the way to go, but these guys are nasty. They have a surge move, so if something shoots at them and manages to kill a berserker, then the berserkers just get to try and charge the thing that tried to shoot them. And if they make it, that means that they get to fight first because it's the other player's turn, which is really annoying. If you ever are playing something with the surge move, you gotta let people know. You gotta warn people because that's just rude. I primed the mini in black. Khorne Berserkers are classically red, and red is a tricky color to paint, so I want to find an easier solution to this. I zenithal the mini using a warm white color that'll hopefully keep the mini nice and vibrant. And to protect this layer of paint, I gave it a quick varnish with satin paint. Airbrush layers can be a little fragile, especially when you throw a wet wash over top, so this airbrush will keep everything right where it is. If there was ever an appropriate color, Slaughter Red is it for the Khorne Berserkers. I took this color and applied it to all the flat sections of his armor. With contrast paint and speed paint, it's important to work quick, getting the paint on everywhere and letting it have time to settle so that I can do the contrast thing of sliding off the raised areas and settling and darkening in the recesses. I like to work section by section, his right ear then his left ear, his right chest then his left chest, one panel at a time. I was somewhat careful not to get this on his trim and weapons, but it's not a big deal if I splash around, because any mistakes I can fix later while pinning up the rest of the mini. Now for his gloves, I took a brown speed paint, thinned it down and put this over the gloves, skulls, holsters, and dick towel. I don't know why berserkers wear gloves over their power gauntlets, maybe it's to keep their hands clean and blood free. After that, I put black speed paint over his weapons and chains. Now for his trim, and I like my corny boys with gold trim, but not bright shiny gold, I like dark brooding gold. I started off base coating all of the trim with a dark brassy gold color, hitting 90% of the trim, only leaving the highest spots uncolored. I also hit the wings of his power plant and the giant icon of corn on his back. This thing grants a blood token if this model's unit destroys an enemy unit. With the dark gold on there, I switched to a bright gold, putting this over the high points and edge highlighting and glazing this everywhere else to brighten up the brass a little bit. I still want to keep it dark. I used a dry brush to hit the larger gold sections, and to finish it off, I did a sponging of silver to make the gold look weathered. The berserkers aren't known for keeping their armor perfectly clean, so he should be a little rough. I got my little corn berserker redded with the gold, and he's looking good, he's looking fine. He looks kind of like the Joy Toy action figure of the corn berserker. And I could call him done. I could touch him up a little bit, hit that arm, call it a day, but that's not quite enough. When I see a World Eater's army, and it's just a sea of red, if it's just red, it might as well be a Blood Angel's army. I think this color scheme needs a little extra something. It needs a little bit more color, and I think that color should be green. Looking at what tools I have in my toolkit, I can't quite make up my mind between a blue-green or a green-blue. I kinda want both, and I think I can get both if I go with an opaque blue-green and then I use this ink, Phthalo Cyan. This is like a dark emerald green color. I mixed a little bit of this into my blue, and then I put a drop of this onto my palette. I started out with the ink. This is a transparent color. Over top of the gold, it should tint to a dark green, and over the red, it should turn almost black. This will be the step 1 of some verdigris. I put this here and there all over the model, especially in the cracks and crevices. Then I super watered down the blue-green and started dripping this onto the jade green, letting it flow into the cracks and along the details and rivets. This is like a wash in reverse, highlighting the recesses. And this pop of green blue will add a ton of interest right next to the bright red. I don't know what he's been rolling around in. Probably blood, but it's really done a number on his armor, really making it oxidize. And you know what else has been rolling around in questionable things? That's right, our website. EonsOfBattle.com is the place to find merch like our EOB dice, wet pallets, water slide decals, and basing toppers and bits. It's also the best way to support us with memberships. Each month, members get a credit that they can use on our new monthly terrain packs or any previous pack we have ever made. This June, we made an absolute monstrosity. What better way to show off that a battle is serious business than a god machine already dead on the ground? These shattered remains create thematic line of sight blocking and ruined terrain perfect for grimdark games. With a titanic rigor mortis claw, silent cannon, and lifeless eyes, this beast won't be doing much other than looking pretty while those who are still kicking win the day. This ruined titan fits right at home with our previous crash spaceship terrain. On his bare arm, I glazed on a very thin layer of a light beige red, and then I used a little bit of my red armor color and blue-green to give his skin a sickly pale complexion. And seeing the model all together, I decided to throw on some more gold edge highlights on the armor to brighten it up a little and make the verdigris a little bit more subtle. After that, I took a tan color and made some micro scratches on his leather bits, and I used this color to highlight his skulls, hitting the brown forehead to make these skulls look dry and crispy. While I had the blue paint out on my palette, I mixed in a little of my original ice yellow from the Zenithal and I painted this over his eye lenses. Now, if I had a World Eater's army, I would want to bring as many Khorne berserkers as possible. They're the special thing of the World Eaters, and so I would want to bring at least 6 squads of 10. 6 squads of 10 actually fits very comfortably into 1,000 points. It definitely goes above 1,000 points if you buy them all characters, which you maybe should, but, you know, nice easy 1,000 points. Now that's a lot of choppy Space Marines, and it makes me a little nervous because I play an army with a lot of choppy Space Marines, and the problem with close combat is, you know, you charge in, you hope to wipe out your opponent, and if you manage to do it, that's great, but then you're kind of just left hanging out in the open, and then the turn shifts over into your opponent's turn, and now it's their time to retaliate with the rest of their army. Now, the Khorne Berserkers have a way around this. The army rule for the Word Bearers is Pact of Blood. At the start of your turn, you roll 8 dice and you take a look at them, and you're looking for pairs and triples because you can spend those pairs and triples on abilities. Now, for the most part, I see people taking the ones that are like lethal hits, sustained hits, devastating wounds, fight on death, which are all very, very good. But there is another one that gives you a 6-inch consolidate. 6-inch consolidate is actually kinda huge. I don't see people running it very often, but as a Black Templar player, I wish I could have that ability because, you know, you've got your guys stuck out in the open because they've just won a combat, It's pretty easy to 6-inch slide consolidate into another unit or 6-inch slide onto an objective. That gives you a lot more freedom and a little bit of security with your close combat units compared to my Black Templar. In reading all the rules for World Eaters, it kind of seems like Black Templar are just loyalist World Eaters. But we got Helbrecht, so we're cooler. For the base, the Verdigris cooled the temperature of the paint job a little, and I want to bring it back with a little saturated warmth. I started out slobbering an orangey brown all over the base, and I dry brushed some orange over top of this, highlighting all the edges and the sand grains. Then I did another dry brushing of yellow. I don't want to go any brighter than this. I want to keep the base really saturated. I glazed some watery brown over the bottom of the base to add a very subtle vignette, and then I picked out the skulls with some of the tans and yellows I had on my palette. Where do all the skulls on Warhammer bases come from? It's an age-old question. This guy turned out pretty good. I started today not really caring that much about the World Eaters because my only experience with them is losing to them over and over and over, and how annoying Angron is. You guys know that Angron gets to come back to life? Like, if Angron dies, there's a pretty good chance that he comes back to life, which is absurd. But I didn't like the World Eaters, but they're kind of really fun to paint. I really like how the red turned out, and the red was easy to do with the speed paint. Usually red is a tricky color to do, but the jade, that kind of jade green verdigris, it makes it really, really spicy. Like, it's really fun to have that extra color. If I was doing a World Eater's army, like, I would love to put that color on the webbing of like a Winged Demon Prince's wings, or have it be the glow on some Forge Fiends like ectoplasm cannons. Just that one little extra color does so much. Of all the Chaos Space Marine Legions I've painted, this guy is pretty up there. I really liked how the Death Guard turned out. I really like how the Alpha Legion guy turned out. And this guy wasn't necessarily easy to do. That trim took a minute, but I really like how it looks. Technically, you can ally Khorne Berserkers into a generic Chaos Space Marine army. I don't have a generic Chaos Space Marine army, but if I did, I think I would have to put in a squad of 10 Khorne Berserkers because it looks so good. Let me know in the comments below what Chaos Space Marine Legion should I take a look at next. And never forget, blood for the Blood God, skulls for the Skull Throne, milk for the cornflakes.